informal written and a spoken language, which is originally began as the Western language of English, which is being influenced by the Oriental languages such as Mandarin and Cantonese. Chinglish is often associated with the concept of its grammatical mistakes and the false pronunciations. It's also known as China English or Chinese English. Chinglish is regularly mocked for its irregularity and rather comical ways of its presentation. Despite it's a common way to say, like, it's very humorous when someone speaks Chinglish, and Chinglish is also known around the world for its infamous linguistic impact.
Stop.
Hello everyone. Although our introduction mentioned Chinglish as a form of grammatical English era mixed with Chinese, Chinglish could also be an actual form of Chinese as well. That's why today I'm going to show you a list of loanwords in Chinese. Although still a part of the Chinese language, they could also be seen as Chinglish, since loanwords are basically mixed with pronunciations of English. So now let's just have a look at the way these words are pronounced.
Coca-Cola,
可口可乐，
Disney,
迪士尼，
McDonald's,
麦当劳，
Italy,
意大利，
Canada,
加拿大，
Harry Potter,
哈利波特，
Pizza Hut.
必胜客。Go.
Okay, now that you all have a clear idea on what Chinglish sounds like, I'll show you an interview. We did this with our fellow students in school. His name is Gene. Gene comes from Taiwan, as we all know. And what we basically did is we showed him this same list of words, and with a set of open-ended questions. Through these questions, we'll explore how Chinglish is viewed, and we'll hear opinions through a Taiwanese perspective.
So the first question, what do you think of all these words being translated into English? Do you prefer using original English or the Chinese version of them? For example, if you're in Taiwan, would you like to use the English word or would you use the Chinese?
Well, obviously, when I'm talking to a Taiwanese, I will use Mandarin, but usually if I talk to British people, I will use English. It depends on people you talk to, really.
We speak these words. Do you think they are a Chinese language, or is it a Chinglish, or is it still in some extent English?
Well, from what I can see, a lot of them are directly translated from the pronunciation of English. So I assume they can be still part English, because there's really no traditional Chinese word for these countries, because when the words are invented, these countries are not even discovered. So I guess you can say they're still part English.
Do you think the Chinese should translate them into a complete Chinese translation, or do you think they should just follow the English pronunciation?
Well, the first thing is, it's very difficult to translate it, to make up your own Chinese word for certain things that do not exist before we invent Chinese. So translating from the direct pronunciation is really the only option we have. And anyway, people are really used to these words already, so there's really no point of making up new words for these countries. And companies.
Harry Potter and Coca-Cola, do you think
They are part of Chinese.
so that you think they are still part of the Chinese language, despite the fact that they have English sound for
Well, I guess you need a word for everything, and because the world is getting more globalized, so I think they are gradually becoming the official Chinese languages. So yeah, I guess you can say that's Chinese. They're somewhere in the middle, I guess.
What kind of people people do you think uses Chinglish the most?
Well, really, Chinese people who speaks English, I don't really know. I guess we just refer to whatever we want to speak it.
So basically like Chinese people?
It's gradually become official languages because we have no other words to replace them, so yeah.
Any particular reason you think people are using it instead of actual English?
Well, first, I think Chinglish is for Chinese people who doesn't really know how to speak English, and Chinglish is just like a sort of help for them, and they can use it to express themselves to people who speak English. And also, like I said before, there's really no other words for these things we listed before in traditional Chinese, so they have gradually become the official Chinese. Right. So, in conclusion, Chinese and English are gradually merging in modern times, and there is really no clear definition of what is Chinese and English for some part anymore. I think people are getting used to it by now, and it has been going on for the last 50 years. So I guess Chinglish is really part of our lives.
To conclude our topic, we think Chinglish is not as bad as it looks. It helps a lot of people who doesn't really speak English very well. And there are other people outside, they are like really plain lazy to use proper English.
Chinglish can maintain the way people express themselves. Furthermore, they're usually used in casual conversations rather than formal ones. Thereby, I think that it shouldn't be much of a problem for Chinglish as long as they're used casually.
We don't think the language should be that dominant, and it should be shared instead.
Just like how the Chinese are able to understand certain concepts better by including certain elements of English into their own language.
This just doesn't go for Chinese language, but different languages with different culture which adopt English instead.
Through this sharing process, I believe that knowledge could be understood better through sharing rather than keeping the language just by one dominant culture.